Коллеги, к сожалению, мы скоро объявим технический перерыв, но заседание мы должны начать вовремя.
Dear colleagues, today is the 31st of January 2022. It's 3 p.m. Moscow time. We're beginning the session of the Dissertation Council for the defense of the dissertation thesis by Darina Polikarpova. The dissertation is submitted in conformity with requirements for the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences. The topic of the dissertation is an aesthetic analytical of cinematic sustainability. We are waiting for our colleagues who have not been able to contact us, so we are beginning technical break number 1.
Как долго у нас будет технический перерыв? Можно узнать?
Видите?
Да.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, technical break number 1 is over. I hope we will not have any technical failures, although they are possible because some of the members of the Dissertation Council are attending the session online. I have to read out some official papers. Under the order issued by the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, as of the 19th of November 2021, I, Professor Boris Sokolov, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Professor of St. Petersburg State University, have been appointed the chairperson of this Dissertation Council. The other members of the Dissertation Council have been appointed by the same order. They are participating in the session remotely. Professor Lyubov Bugaeva, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Associate Professor of St. Petersburg State University. Can you hear us and see us? Yes, I can hear you and I can see you. Professor Anatoly Rykov, Doctor of Philosophic Sciences, Professor of St. Petersburg State Universities. Professor Rykov, can you hear us and see us? Yes, I can hear you and see you. Professor Slavka Kopchakova from the University of Preshkov, can you hear us and see us?
Yes, I can hear you, I can see you. Hello.
Thank you.
The academic degree seeker is also here. The research advisor, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences. Oh, I'm sorry. I have forgotten to mention Professor Nikolai Kharyanov, Professor of the Gerasimov Russian University of Cinematography. Professor Kharyanov, can you hear us and see us? You are saying something, but please switch on your microphone. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Could you please try again? Please switch on your microphone. There's a technical failure. Just a second, please. We will try to repair the technical failure. Technical break number 2.
Я не выключал.
Все прекрасно. Вы нас...
So, can you hear us and see us? Okay, great. So the academic degree seeker, Darina Polikarpova, is here. The academic advisor, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Associate Professor of St. Petersburg State University, Artyom Radeev, is also here. I would like to ask the members of the Dissertation Council who are participating in the session remotely to switch off your microphones, but please make sure that your microphone is switched on when you are given the floor. The session of the Dissertation Council is being recorded and it is being broadcast on the official website of St. Petersburg State University. It is also being interpreted from Russian into English and from English into Russian. You can ask your questions and make comments about the dissertation using the email address that you can find on the official website. You can express your opinion or ask a question about the dissertation. This will allow you to participate in the academic discussion. The technical personnel will refer the questions to me, and I will read them out during the discussion. The questions are supposed to be relevant to the contents of the dissertation. The authors of the questions are to write down their name, position, and workplace. The questions which are not relevant to the contents of the dissertation and anonymous questions will not be read out. Under the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University on the procedure of granted academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, the session of the Dissertation Council is duly constituted, provided at least 2/3 of the members of the Dissertation Council are present. However, the total number is not to be fewer than 4 people. This Dissertation Council consists of 5 people, 5 of which are present, including 4 people who are participating remotely. Professor Kopchakova's camera is off, so we are having technical break.
Я надеюсь, он быстро закончится.
Professor Kopchakova, unfortunately we cannot see you.
Yes, I see. I hear you, but I see that my visual is off. I don't know why. I'm on mobile phone because from my PC it was not possible to connect. So it's okay. I can hear you. It's okay.
The technical break is over. So this dissertation council consists of 5 people, 5 of which are present, including 5 people who are attending the session remotely. And we can hear them and see them. Therefore, we have a quorum. I would like to ask the representative of the Department for Dissertation Council Management to make an attendance list. So the agenda is as follows. The session will last for about 2 hours. Number 1, the chairperson's presentation about the documents submitted by the degree seeker and their conformity with the requirements. Chairperson replies to questions, if any. The degree seeker's presentation, providing an overview and findings of the research, about 15 minutes. Questions to the degree seeker regarding the presentation, no more than 2 minutes for each question. Replies to the questions, no more than 5 minutes in general. Reports on the dissertation, including external reports. Next, the council members will be taking the floor in turns. About 10 minutes per person. The chairperson's report on the dissertation, about 10 minutes as well. The degree seeker's comments about the reports and replies to the questions, no more than 20 minutes. Open discussion. The floor will be given to the members of the audience. They can give a brief account of their ideas or ask a question about the research. No more than 2 minutes per person. It is necessary to fill in the registration form and give their full name, academic title, position and workplace before the talk. Next, the chairperson will read out the questions received by email. Please note that questions which take more than 2 minutes to read will not be read out. Replies to the questions, no more than 2 minutes per person. Presentation of the research supervisor. Deliberations of the members of the dissertation council before the open balloting on conferring or non-conferring the academic degree. The discussion of the results of the defense is not broadcast. Open balloting. Vote counting and recording of the results in the protocol. Making a decision on whether to confer or not to confer the academic degree. The degree seeker's closing speech, no more than 2 minutes. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or objections about the agenda? Since there are no questions and objections, I would like to proceed with the agenda. Please switch off, or rather leave your telephones set on the silent mode. The council members who are participating in the session remotely are advised not to switch off their mobile phones so that we can contact you in case of a technical failure. Thank you. My short presentation. The dissertation by Darina Polikarpova is submitted in conformity with requirements for the academic degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences, scientific specialty 573, aesthetics. The dissertation was approved for the defense by the order of the academic secretary of St. Petersburg State University. The dissertation was completed in St. Petersburg State University. She was a postgraduate student. Her research advisor is a Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Associate Professor of St. Petersburg State University, Artyom Radeev. The academic degree seeker has published 3 research papers, including 3 papers in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science. The academic degree seeker has submitted a full set of documents to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University. The documents are in compliance with item 12 of section 3 of the order. The representative of the Department for Dissertation Council Management has the copies of the documents. So before giving the floor to the academic degree seeker, I would like to ask the members of the Dissertation Council if they have any questions to the academic degree seeker, and if it is necessary to read out the list of documents submitted by the academic degree seeker. So there are no questions or objections. Now let us proceed with the agenda. And I give the floor to Darina Polikarpova. So the floor is yours. Please tell us about your research findings. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, dear colleagues, dear friends who are probably watching me, the topic of my dissertation is an aesthetical analytics of cinematic sensibility. Before talking about the research outcomes, I would like to clarify some key concepts and some key issues, as well as to clarify some concepts which are used in the title of the dissertation. I believe that any scientific research combines two programs, a negative one and a positive one. The negative program encourages to dismiss something. It strives to overcome something. My research project was born out of resistance, and its main opponent is different ways to talk about the philosophy of the cinema and the theory of the cinema. Here we see clash of different philosophical discourses. However, they all understand the cinema in a way which I do not share. They understand the cinema as a correlation of relations between the conventional director, the conventional filmmaker, and the viewer. And the cinema is understood as a container of external views, emotions, actions, and interpretations. And each film that we see, behind each film that we see, we try to reconstruct the image of the filmmaker. Since the end of the 20th century, we have seen a shift in the philosophy of the cinema towards the viewer, and the focus has been shifted to the perception of the film, and the viewer has become instrumental to the philosophy of the cinema. And now we are more focusing on the reception of the film, of the cinema. So, my dissertation opposes this disregard of the cinema itself, and I raise a sort of outdated question in my dissertation. The question is, what is the cinema? What are the salient features of the cinema? I say that this is an outdated question because today most people focus on the discourse around the cinema rather than the discourse of the cinema. However, I cannot say that my project is unique. The dissertation discusses similar attempts. For example, it talks about projects by Vivian Sobchak, Film Body, and Daniel Frampton, Film Mind, which insist on the autonomy of the cinema. Sobchak says that the film has a body, and Frampton believes that the cinema has a thinking ability, has a cognitive ability. And in my dissertation, I believe that previous theories talk about the autonomy of the film and not about the autonomy of the cinema. And in my dissertation, I make a distinction between the film and the cinema. Moreover, previous theories use anthropomorphisms, the view which I do not share. So the issue of cinematic autonomy is not a settled one, which proves that the topic of my dissertation is relevant. However, my dissertation also offers a new approach to this issue, which shows that the dissertation has scientific novelty. I suppose that cinematic autonomy should be driven by cinematic sensibility. And I suppose that the cinema combines different types of perceptions into sensory experience. So the overall goal of my dissertation is to develop a new concept of cinema as a sensory experience and to analyze it using aesthetic tools. Now I would like to clarify the word aesthetics, which is used in the title of my dissertation. The aesthetics as a philosophical subject combines different traditions. In my dissertation, I understand aesthetics as the philosophy of sensibility. And here I follow the works of Alexander Baumgarten and Immanuel Kant, as well as many contemporary scholars, such as Madalina Diaconu, Wolfgang Welsh, and Artyom Radiev. So in my dissertation, to analyze the cinema from an aesthetic point of view means to analyze its sensibility. So why do I believe that sensibility should be the fundamental line for the cinematic autonomy? So I suppose that an ability for perception is a salient feature of the cinema. And I suppose that this is the novelty of my dissertation. In the first chapter, I provide an outline of my dissertation, and in the second chapter, I focus on the texts of well-known filmmakers and theoreticians. The third chapter deals with sensibility in the history of philosophy. I believe that before sensibility has been disregarded, and this is connected with the fact that man has been the subject of this topic, and for a human being, pure sensory experience is hardly ever attained. Therefore, the sensibility in previous works was a little bit different from how I understand it in my dissertation. However, we come across another understanding of the sensibility which works differently. And according to this approach, sensibility is different, and I call this sensibility agnostic sensibility, and I suppose that the cinema possesses agnostic sensibility since it is devoid of body and mind. The fourth chapter deals with the analytics of cinematic sensibility. It is stated that the cinema has its sensory organs, which allows to perceive some sensory elements, such as space and time, movement, rhythm, and so on. Besides, the last chapter also deals with two other important issues. The first one is that film directors have been trying to get rid of the so-called unnatural element in the sensibility. They try to adjust cinematic sensibility to human sensibility. This led to the creation of a specific canon, which include illusion of continuous movement, illusion of depth, uniformity of the sound and of the visual image, and so on. The second important idea here is that we are supposed to identify discrepancies between the viewer's sensory experience and cinematic sensory experience. And the best way to do it is to analyze those films which do not adjust cinematic sensibility to human sensibility, namely in the experimental cinema. So in my dissertation I focus on the analysis of such films as those by Haruna Faruqi, Mona Khatum and many others. On this slide you can see the main research findings of the dissertation. Now I would like to talk about the theoretical and practical significance of my dissertation. Suppose that my dissertation both raises issues and also provides some answers to the questions. It was important for me to come up with a new way to talk about the cinema. So I suppose that some concepts that I discuss in my work should be studied further in future research. For example, that I suppose that each element of cinematic sensibilities, such as space, rhythm and movement, require further research. Moreover, I suppose that my dissertation will give a new momentum to the development of aesthetics. Moreover, there are other subjects whose access to the world is important and whose access to the world is not restricted to sensibility. So I suppose that my dissertation raises lots of issues. For example, how is our relation with the cinema, how does our relation with the cinema develop? Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, do you have any questions about the dissertation or about the presentation? I would like to remind you that this should not take more than 2 minutes. As far as I understand, there are no questions. So now let us move on with our agenda. I will ask the members of the Dissertation Council to read out their reports. The academic degree seeker can answer the questions after each report, or the degree seeker can answer the questions after all the reports have been read out. Okay, the academic degree seeker will answer the questions after all the reports have been read. All the reports on the dissertation have been published on the official website of St. Petersburg State University. Therefore, I suggest that you focus only on the most important parts of your report and on the critical remarks and on the questions. So I hope you do not object that we focus only on the most critical parts of your reports and on the questions that you have in your report. Let us give the floor to Professor Slavka Kopchakova.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will try to speak only about the most important things. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We hear you.
Okay. Because I'm only from mobile. So, my review to Darina Polikarpova's dissertation. I think it's extraordinary project which fills gap in the current state of knowledge into related scholarly disciplines, film philosophy and film aesthetics. Polikarpova took a responsible stance. She showed a good knowledge of focal text and context related to the defined issues. She was able to competently analyze them and evaluate their relevance to the topic of dissertation. As she has presented, her dissertation thesis consists of introduction, 4 chapters, conclusions, list of the bibliographic research. It deals with relatively new and highly topical issue. She selected very important problems and problems which are not so typical in maybe discourses through the latest decades. So I have several theses to maybe key or to her key or innovative premises of the dissertation. Polikarpova refuses to consider film language an arts form dependent on authority of production and consumption, or to understand it as a collection of film. It is very, very interesting premise. Secondly, she shifts the traditional philosophical understanding of object-subject relationships from time of discourse to realization of an object. The object is research, of her research is cinema, and as concept of theory and concept of phenomenon. It's a very systemic way how to think and consider this phenomenon. Thirdly, Polikarpova introduces the topic of film autonomy as a sensory autonomy, as she has mentioned, Vertow's and Epstein's conceptions. Already here the autonomy of cinema is understood as perceptual autonomy. In other words, cinema doesn't exist only when someone is watching it. It is very interesting idea for me. I appreciate that out of the discussed concept, she adopts the term cine-eye, which corresponds to the philosophical term of Kant's pronouns, judgment of the eye. Fourthly, the author, Polikarpova, accepts philosophical research methods as the most adequate for analysis and interpretation of film, apparatus of aesthetics and philosophy of sensibility. Fifthly, Polikarpova insists on difference between film and cinema. It is absolutely principal idea. Sixthly, the author claims that she focused on sensory experience as a continuation of research line focused on aesthetic experience. I see the line of Artem Radeyev's way of research and way of thinking. So it is continuation with his scientific work. So I'm not going to speak about first and second capitals because they are very typical for dissertation thesis where Polikarpova outlines her basic positions. I would like very shortly think of chapter 3, ontological aspects. We can see that she's acquainted with how contemporary philosophy rethinks the project of analytical philosophy of the Anglo-American tradition of the 20th century. By renewing the interest in ontological questions. To a certain point, I missed the clarification of what was behind the ontological turn in the late 90s or after 2000, which would convince the reader of its being functional and productive for the film. Polikarpova goes directly to the heart of the matter. She starts by raising questions of inclination to the so-called object-oriented ontology. But it is a very effective way how to continue to her analysis of the problem. They are based on the analysis of two similar projects of Sobchak's and Frampton's philosophy. Chapter 4, the aesthetic aspect, contains an initial statement about the unsatisfactory situation. So she can say that research project developed here was provoked by a state of permanent dissatisfaction with maybe state of the art, we could say. The last chapter presents the author's efforts to verify the methods she has outlined as effective ones. She means aesthetic analysis, and to broaden the knowledge through what she can benefit from the based on analysis and interpretation of specific field experiments. She adopts theories contributed by many philosophers, theorists, and filmmakers. On the other hand, it's a pity that in many cases it is not directly the author's analysis, but the analysis conducted by other film theorists. Her focus is on film experience, particular aesthetics categories such as sensory organs, perceivable elements, and the structure of cinematic sensibility. It is a very principal thing. The final considerations were directed at emphasizing the need to distinguish our sensory experience from cinema as a sensory experience. So it is contribution to science philosophical by her project. As this work is written in foreign language, I don't comment formal aspect, don't comment quality of the translation, and so on and so on. Even so, I consider this dissertation to be managed on the required level. My two questions or discussions prompts are, first question, please try to clarify the aesthetics category of cine eye in relation to the results of your dissertation. Second question, which of the presented analysis of experimental films are original, so it is conducted by you, not by other authors? Finally, my conclusion, the dissertation meets the basic requirements established by order of St. Petersburg State University. The candidate Darina Alexandrovna Polikarpova deserves the award of the scientific degree of candidate of philosophical science, candidate filozofických nauk, in the scientific specialty 5.7.3 aesthetics. So absolutely final statement from me is that I think that it is very good work, and it is extraordinary project and very interesting approach to the current problems of film as a subject, not as something that is product of somebody. Thank you very much for your attention.
Благодарю.
Thank you very much for your report. So I suppose Darina will be asking, or rather will be answering the questions after all the reports have been read out. Now I give the floor to the next member of the Dissertation Council. I give the floor to Professor Bugaeva. Please very briefly focus on the most relevant parts of your report. Dear colleagues, my name is Professor Bugaeva. I read the dissertation by Darina Polikarpova. The dissertation focuses on the cinema itself, or rather the autonomous cinema, the cinema which possesses sensibility. And I suppose that this is a very important issue. The academic degree seeker doesn't believe that the issue of the cinematic sensibility is a settled one, and I share this opinion. The dissertation consists of 4 chapters, an introduction and a list of references. Darina Polikarpova outlined the structure of cinematic sensibility. She also focuses on the distinction between the cinema and the film. I would like to say that the dissertation is well structured and well written. The conclusion of the dissertation contains major research findings where she focuses on the structure of cinematic sensibility. The conclusion also talks about possibilities for future research, and this is a very good approach. I like it when the dissertation opens up new possibilities for further research, and it proves that the dissertation makes contribution to modern science. However, I have some questions I would like to discuss. Darina Polikarpova opposes two views, the cinema eye and the cinema fist. However, you do not mention that here we are talking about chronicles. I suppose that here we see two different models, the one by Vertov and the one by Eisenstein. Vertov believes that documentary has the elements of the fictional film, and Eisenstein believes that it's vice versa. I would like to say that it is possible to say that you should have explained that here the difference between fictional film and documentary film are not important, or otherwise you should have laid some foundations for the comparisons between these two types of films. Next, Darina Polikarpova analyzes Vivian Sobchak's theory, namely her work, The Address of an Eye, Phenomenology of Film Experience, as well as Laura Marx's The Skin of the Film. However, Darina Polikarpova doesn't mention another important work by Laura Marx, which is Touch, published in 2002. And this book, Touch, was important for Sobchak's theory. So I suppose you should have mentioned this book as well. Sobchak writes the following: the embodied structures that allow for more than a merely cognitive or rudimentary knee-jerk cinematic sensibility, and attempts to demonstrate how cinematic intelligibility, meaning, and value emerge carnally through our senses. I think it should have been interesting for you to analyze such statements, especially if we take into account that Sobchak believes that viewers feel sympathy or empathy, and they also react to such elements as speed and space. There are some inaccuracies in the dissertation. For example, Torbin Grudan is not an art historian. And Richard Schusterman doesn't really focus on the cinema. He's the creator of the philosophy of sensibility. However, you do not mention this in your dissertation. The overall assessment of the dissertation is positive, and the critical remarks do not change my positive assessment of the dissertation. The dissertation makes an important contribution to philosophy and cinema aesthetics. The research findings of the dissertation are credible. The reference list includes 186 items. 65 items are in English. And the research findings are also relevant. I would like to say that the dissertation by Darina Polikarpova complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order, and Darina Polikarpova can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences, scientific specialty 573, aesthetics. I would like to add that this is a wonderful dissertation. It is very well written. Thank you. Professor Bugaeva, thank you very much. I give the floor to Professor Rykov. The floor is yours. The dissertation by Darina Polikarpova deals with aesthetical analytics of the cinema. The academic degree seeker deals with the issue of sensibility, which is gaining traction in the epoch of postmodernism. Therefore, I believe that the topic of the dissertation is relevant. It is an interdisciplinary research which combines elements of media theory, aesthetics, art history, and so on. I would like to say that the academic degree seeker sets an ambitious goal. The academic degree seeker is interested in the fundamentals of the aesthetics of the cinema. Her research can shed new light on the philosophical and aesthetic issues in general. The academic degree seeker provides rationale for all her research findings, and I believe her methods are also effective. I like that the academic degree seeker is sometimes critical about different versions of the theory and philosophy of art. The academic degree seeker takes everything with a pinch of salt. Moreover, I would like to say that the academic degree seeker has a great knowledge of modern aesthetics, and she's able to identify different approaches and strategies in her dissertation. The academic degree seeker formulates her own theoretical framework, and she focuses on the agency of the cinema. And the idea here is to suggest an overall strategy which would allow us to describe cinematic experience from the point of view of the aesthetics theory. And I believe that such generalizing theories are instrumental for modern science. The academic degree seeker focuses on the autonomy and conventionality of the cinematic language. It is necessary to understand the inner laws of the cinema, which are closely related with the material and technological environment, and sometimes they clash with the laws of human perception. And the academic degree seeker believes that such semi-automatic systems which create image comply with the part of the semiotic theory which describes indexical signs. However, the conventionality of the cinematic experience does not mean that symbolism is instrumental for the cinema, or that it is dependent on the human. Darina Polikarpova does not have a direct understanding of different spiritual and expressionist theories. I believe that she is right when she underlines that the object-free or the artificial element of the cinematic experience. And I believe that the study of cinematic means of expression in the context of the philosophy of aesthetics is a merit of the dissertation. The academic degree seeker identifies the basic elements of the cinema as a medium, and I share this approach. Moreover, here we see a demarcation line between the signifying and the signifier, and this issue is relevant for other types of art as well. Darina Polikarpova also focuses on different effects of the camera work. The academic degree seeker distances herself from social and politically engaged approaches, and she focuses on the sensibility of the cinema. She talks about the salient feature of the cinematic sensibility. The form and the sensibility in the cinema is regarded not only as a structure, but also as a ready-made, as a combination of different images that were obtained due to the result of the work of a technical device. This visual material cannot be absolutely adjusted to human perception. So, the academic degree seeker also focuses on the history and on the theory of avant-garde and postmodernism art. She gives a comprehensive analysis of specific films in her dissertation. She draws upon different theoretical frameworks, and her statements are seamlessly integrated into the text of the dissertation. She identifies numerous relations between the development of aesthetics, avant-garde and post-avant-garde theories and practices, and the issue of sensibility. And this is an important tool for the actualization and rationalization of aesthetics. In other words, she develops new methods of interpretation of the aesthetics experience. Darina Polikarpova draws upon different theories, and she uses philosophical and aesthetic tools to analyze the material. This allows her to provide a comprehensive analysis. The dissertation provides numerous examples from the theory and history of the cinema. The text of the dissertation is uniform, and the dissertation itself is logically written. I would like to say that the dissertation draws upon different aesthetical and philosophical theories. I would like to say that the dissertation proves that the academic degree seeker is familiar with different works, from Baumgarten and Kahn to Deleuze and Lyotard. and her familiarity with different theories allows her to provide interpretation of the material. The author also talks about the shift in postmodernism. However, she does not forget about the works of the founding fathers of aesthetics. The academic degree seeker uses effective tools, effective methods, which allow her to compare different aesthetic theories and also to apply them in practice in order to interpret specific objects of art. The author is close to avant-gardist aesthetics. However, it does not make the dissertation less academic. The research findings are not identical with formalistic concepts, namely those by Genrich Welflin or Clement Greenberg. The academic degree seeker focuses on the material salient features of the cinema, and we can say that her approach is close to those advocated by Nikolai, Punin, Hubert Damshin, Ziggy Vertov, and so on. However, I would like to say that some issues are not discussed by Russian aesthetics. And moreover, I would like to say that there is no further research, or there is no prior research of postmodernist analytics of sensibility. Darina Polikarpova has collected and analyzed very interesting material, and her dissertation makes a great contribution to the art history. Moreover, her analysis is based on very good knowledge of the material and an ability to interpret it. Darina Polikarpova provides numerous examples of film interpretations, and she has an independent view on the interpretation of the films. And I believe the combination of the technological aspect, aesthetic aspect, and artistic aspect makes a contribution to the aesthetics as science. However, I have some critical remarks. I believe that many mythologies that you talk about in the dissertation are very important. And I suppose that this broadens the scope of your dissertation. Therefore, these mythologies can be regarded within the context of the Romantic culture. They are close to modern American mass culture, or the culture which uses the elements of double coding. Stephen King, for example. These mythologies are deeply rooted in different romantic and realistic areas of the art of the 19th century. If we combine romantic roots and scientific roots of the mythologies that you discuss in the dissertation, Then we can relate the issues that you deal with in the dissertation with a wide variety of other issues. Romanticism is often associated with non-critical or idealistic theories in art. However, it also incorporated a pragmatic element. This becomes obvious if you read theoretical works by Edgar Poe. Therefore, I suppose that the scope of your dissertation is wider. So, mythologisms that you talk about in your dissertation have been used as parts of more complex, of more comprehensive semiotic systems. Understanding of art as show business, as mythological design, or science system does not contradict its interest to the sensible technological or formalistic elements. A long time before the epoch of the Romanticism, sensibility became part and parcel of the theory and practice of art. Here I'm talking about Baroque and Renaissance, the Antiquity and Middle Ages, and Oriental tradition. If we recall cinematic effects of Rubens or Caravaggio, then it will become obvious to us why the issues raised in the dissertation are much wider, and the scope of your dissertation, the scope of your research is much wider. However, these critical remarks do not change the overall positive assessment of the dissertation, and the dissertation by Darina Polikarpova complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And I suppose Darina Polikarpova can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of Philosophical Sciences, Scientific Specialty 573, Aesthetics. The dissertation is compliant with sections 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order. Thank you. Thank you very much for your detailed report. Now I give the floor to Professor Nikolai Kharyanov. Please give us a brief account of your report. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, please let me not to read out the report from beginning to end. I will focus only on the critical remarks. It'll take me some time to read the critical remarks. I am Nikolai Kharyanov. I am Professor Kharyanov. I am familiar with Darina Polikarpova's research papers. I read her chapter, which she published in the collective monograph. And in my papers, I refer to papers written by Darina Polikarpova. And I believe that the dissertation is a very important event for the philosophy of the cinema, for the theory of the cinema. And it also makes an important contribution to aesthetics. At the outset, I would like to say that my overall positive assessment of the dissertation is positive. This dissertation gives new approach to what we see. It's like a breakthrough. I suppose that the academic degree seeker is very professional in her dissertation. She provides a very philosophical view on the cinema. A lot has been written about the cinema. However, Darina Polikarpova was able to come up with a newer approach, and a lot has not been clarified in the aesthetics of the cinema. And this is the question the dissertation deals with. And Darina Polikarpova has a lot to say in her dissertation. I'm going to omit some specific remarks, since my assessment of the dissertation is highly positive. The academic degree seeker is familiar with the works on the theory and history of the cinema. And I think the author should be given credit for this. However, I would like to ask a question. That's a very important question. It deals with the tasks of the dissertation and about the relation to the humanities. And this general question contains a list of specific questions. I'm really sorry. I have some problems with my voice because I'm ill at that moment. The dissertation deals with a number of issues connected with the theory of the cinema, the philosophy of the cinema, and with aesthetics, with the cinema aesthetics and cinematic sensibility. So we are dealing with a very deep and creative research, which can make a great contribution to the cinema theory and cinema in general. But here I quote, "Sometimes we come across machine cinematic vision." This is a quotation from the dissertation. I think there could be this could be in clash with the principle of anthropomorphism. I believe that humanities is in an interesting relationship to the dissertation here. The dissertation states that a cinema should be cleared of the filmmakers' practices, of the viewer's involvement, as well as ideological ideas. and it should be presented as something like pure cinema, quote unquote. This is the definition which was proposed in the French cinema theory in the 20s. We will use this concept, which the academic degree seeker borrows from the cinema history and which analyzes in the first chapter. And here we see that the filmmaker turns into a mediator of cinematic sensibility. It's page 177 of the dissertation. I would like to say that the academic degree seeker draws upon different philosophical ideas, experience of experimental cinema, and the academic degree seeker tries to provide rationale for the concepts of the cinema theory which were dominant in the second half of the 20th century. Therefore, I am really amazed by the interpretation of many Western concepts which have not yet become part of the Russian scientific discourse. Finally, the academic degree seeker comes to the conclusion that the key to the solution of the issues lies in the aesthetics and not in the philosophical subjects. This might seem unexpected, since classical aesthetics was criticized by postmodernist philosophy. However, the academic degree seeker is not satisfied with classical aesthetics. Why is that? Since aesthetics is a philosophy of sensibility, but the sensibility is not in the philosophy, and it is not a part of aesthetics. Sensibility has not been fully explained by philosophy or by aesthetics. And this issue has not gained traction in any of the two subjects. So the object of aesthetics is the sensibility, and it is the only subject of aesthetics. However, art, or some areas in the art, such as symbolism or expressionism, show that extra sensibility is something that we have in art. For example, the American film theorist Paul Schrader identifies extra sensibility in the films of many filmmakers. Well, but these are specific issues. I am not going to elaborate here. Western aesthetics of the new time is the aesthetics of pure reason, and this is probably its drawback. However, this is the reality of postmodernism. It's the aesthetics of modern. However, aesthetics is not reduced to this. In this regard, sensibility is something dependent. It is not autonomous. And cinema is the place where sensibility becomes autonomous and independent. But as a result, it loses its anthropomorphic features. So, cinema is regarded as sensory experience, which is different from human sensory experience, because in the cinema it is not dependent on other faculties. So, it is clear that aesthetics cannot help us. Aesthetics in the traditional way cannot help us. Professor Slavka Kopchakova. Oh, we are not going to have a technical break. We can see Professor Kopchakova. Please keep within the time limits.
Excuse me, you cannot see me, or?
In the first chapter, the dissertation says that aesthetics is not the only thing that can explain cinematic sensibility. And I suppose it's a very important statement. However, I believe that the dissertation opens up possibilities for further research. So she talks about specific cinematic sensibility. She talks about different aspects of this sensibility. She talks about something different, something which is not connected with human participation. And this something, it's not a result of the filmmaker's actions or of the viewer's perception. These are traces of some new sensory experience. This is page 128 of the dissertation. So, the academic degree seeker is interested in the cinema as some independent object. Therefore, we have some strange positivist conclusion here. The academic degree seeker sort of distances from the human element. Here we see the death of the personality. Here we see the death of the personal element. It's some kind of post-human project. This can be regarded as a manifest of robotization. And this is not cinema philosophy according to Deleuze. It's rather cinema philosophy according to Michel Foucault. So I would like you to clarify how these approaches connect to the culture in general. Is it possible to provide different interpretations? Probably we have a more comprehensive question here. Probably the cinema is just a reaction to the harmony between the reason and sensibility. Probably the cinema played some compensatory role. Is it possible that since the very beginning the cinema was a sort of escape for humans? how can we underestimate aesthetics if it was Kant who saw the main issue here? In the 20th century, the issue of sensibility gained momentum, and it was resolved with the help of the cinema. However, in this case, we should state that cinema's compensatory role uses human element, such as filmmakers' practices, viewers' involvement. However, the project of the new philosophy presented in the dissertation excludes this element. Don't you think that this is the conflict between Vertov and Eisenstein? Eisenstein really appreciated cultural heritage and appreciated anthropomorphism. However, Vertov's ideas were precursors to the new philosophy and to the cinema without anthropomorphism. So Vertov becomes instrumental for the academic degree seeker. So I believe this is an important issue that I should focus on. And today we see that Eisenstein included anthropomorphism in his theory, which is different from the theory by Vertov. And today we see that Vertov's traditions have gained momentum, and the dissertation proves this idea. My critical remark does not change the overall positive assessment of the dissertation. The importance of the dissertation can't be overestimated. So I believe that probably the dissertation might lead to the new understanding of the humanities. Now I will read out the formal phrase. The dissertation by Darina Polikarpova complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order. On the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Polikarpova Darina can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences, scientific specialty 573 aesthetics. Thank you very much. Now I am going to read out my report. I will begin with the conclusion. The dissertation by Darina Polikarpova complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order of St. Petersburg State University. And Darina Polikarpova can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences, scientific specialty 573 aesthetics. My report is published on the official website of St. Petersburg State University. So you had an opportunity to read my report. However, I would like to add a few words. I would like to talk about my impression of the dissertation and read out some critical remarks. I'm pretty sure that this is a very interesting and very deep research paper. It is really well written. I like the academic language that the academic degree uses. I was able to find only just one minor grammatical mistake, and this is a great merit of the dissertation, but it is not the only merit of the dissertation, of course. The academic degree seeker provides very logical rationale in her dissertation. The dissertation even exceeds the requirements, and I would like to academic degree seeker and her research advisor have achieved great results here. Now a few words about my critical remarks. Professor Kharyanov has already read out his report, and my critical remarks are similar. So I believe that in your dissertation you absolutize cinematic sensibility. Kant used to say that lots of things are beyond his sensibility. So what does cinema I see? I suppose that without a human element, we will have just machines. The cinema eye doesn't see anything without a human element. However, I would like to say that we see some transformation of sensibility, but I wouldn't make sensibility absolute, since art is also transformation of the sensibility. Ballet is also transformation of sensibility. Modern gadgets also have an impact on our sensibility. When we drive a car, we feel the speed. We feel distanced from reality sometimes. So, cinema is one of the ways to impact our sensibility. So I wouldn't make it absolute. And another critical remark is about the following thing. She says that sensibility has not been studied before, but I suppose some philosophers have studied, for example, John Locke. You also talk about the absence of the human element at some point, and philosophers mention this as well. I could talk at length about this dissertation. However, the dissertation is written at a very professional way. I suppose that the dissertation is very well written, and I suppose the dissertation really complies with the major requirements, and you should be awarded the academic degree. So, this is my brief report. Now I give the floor to Darina Polikarpova. Please answer the questions or comment on the critical remarks of the members of the Dissertation Council. I would like to thank the members of the Dissertation Council for reading my dissertation. Would like to thank you for the overall positive assessment and also for your questions and critical remarks. I will try to answer your questions. and I will draw upon your critical remarks in my future research. Now I would like to answer specific questions. So it'll take me some time to read out my answers to the questions. First of all, I would like to answer Professor Kopchakova's questions. In her report, Professor Kopchakova states that sometimes I don't act as a discussant, or I sometimes act as an observer in the dissertation. Well, yes, I agree with you. Sometimes I provide a summary of different views. However, I would like to say that I see my critical, or rather my creative role as a mediator. My idea was to, for example, draw a line between Eisenstein and Vertov's debate and a discussion between the structural and expanded cinema, for example. Professor Kopchakova also asked two specific questions. The first one was about the category of cinema eye in relation to the results of my dissertation. I suppose that the concept of cinema eye sort of coincides with my theory of cinematic sensibility. In most interpretations, cinema eye is understood in a quite narrow way, but I suppose that cinema eye has a great heuristic potential, and I wanted to set the philosophical context for the cinema eye. The second question was about the interpretations. So which of the presented analyses are original and which of them were borrowed by other authors, from other authors. I made interpretations of the films by Jordan Belson, Haruna Farooqi, William Burroughs, and Anthony Belch, Derek Jarman, Ziggy Vertov, Takeshi Ito, Brian De Palma, Tashito Matsumo, Peter Rose, and Martina Arnold. I draw upon the work by Gilles Deleuze, The Cinema, when I analyze Carl Dreyer, Alain René, and Alain Robbe-Grillet. And I also draw upon the book The Skin of the Film when I analyze the film by Mona Hatoum. Now I would like to comment on the questions posed by Professor Bugaeva. The report contains a question about the difference between the cinema and the film. Professor Bugaeva says that we may as well make a distinction between painting and a piece of painting. I agree with Professor Bugaeva. However, if somebody wanted to thematize agency of art, then they would also have to make a distinction here. I don't think that we can thematize any art of object as something which is autonomous from the human element. This, for example, does not refer to the theater or to the dance. However, painting and music is different. So the difference between the cinema and the film are important in my dissertation. It was important for me to emphasize the fact that sometimes that cinema is understood as a collection of films, but the cinema is not reduced to a collection of films. There are many films which have not, there are some types of the cinema which have not made it into a film. For example, different chronicles which have been shot but have not been arranged into a film. Secondly, I would like to say that film, unlike the autonomous cinema, is not a correlation of human activity. Film is just something which has been adjusted to consumption. And thirdly, I would like to say that if we distinguish between the film and the cinema, then we can analyze them differently. The next question was about the documentary, which was a stumbling block in the debate between Eisenstein and Vertov. I understand that the debate between Eisenstein and Vertov is a comprehensive and very complex one, and other researchers may identify other aspects of this debate. However, I focus on the elements which are important for me. I agree with Vertov in this documentary is closer to pure cinema, and fictional cinema and its elements distort the essence of the cinema. However, this aspect is not important for my research, because I believe that any cinema can be regarded as a documentary. Because the cinema does not make any difference between an actor and a non-actor, between a plot and non-plot. Now, I would like to say that I agree with the commentary about the fact that I disregarded some works by Vivian Sobchak and Laura Marx. However, the research papers which I discuss in my dissertation are also important for the topic of the dissertation. I also agree with your comment about Torben Grodal. Yes, I agree, he's a theoretician, not an art historian. The last commentary was about Richard Schusterman, which I do not mention in my dissertation. I did not make reference to his project because I find it more important to draw upon specific areas, not draw upon specific projects. So I suppose that specific projects are sometimes not mentioned in my dissertation, because in this context it was important for me to talk about their works in general and not about on their specific works. Now I would like to talk about the commentaries provided by Professor Rykov. He says that the topic of my dissertation is regarded or is related to a wide range of issues. For example, he mentions that the mythologisms that I discuss in my dissertation have rich cultural roots. This approach goes far beyond the scope of my dissertation. However, I believe that this approach is very interesting. And I believe that some papers use this approach to the cinema. And I would like also to mention here Mark Fisher's work on the philosophy of music. I suppose that this approach would allow us to come up to very interesting conclusions. However, this is, I would like to say that this is a new stage of my research. This is a very good topic for my further research, and I would like to thank Professor Rykov for this useful remark. Professor Kharyanov provided a very interesting commentary in his report, and he asks about positive and negative implications of my project for humanities. I would like to say that this is a very challenging issue, and to answer it properly, I would need to write a separate research paper. However, I would like to share my views. I suppose that we can answer this question if we mention the so-called ontological turn, or the object-oriented ontology that I mentioned in my dissertation. The object-oriented ontology is not a dominant approach in my dissertation. However, the implications for humanities, which result from object-oriented ontology, can be quite prominent. So here I see two scenarios. For example, if we suppose that cinema can be regarded without the human element, then in this case cinema will not be subject of humanities anymore. Another scenario is that humanities, or the paradigm of humanities, will become wider, or they will rethink the foundations, and we will see a different approach in humanities. I suppose that the second approach is quite interesting, and here I would like to mention some works, namely the work by Anne-Marie Moll about a new understanding of human body as an assemblage of non-human agents in medical practices, or the work by Manuel Deland, who writes about a society which is inhabited by different non-human agents. And finally, I would like to answer the questions posed by Professor Sokolov. Professor Sokolov writes about the absolutization of cinematic sensibility. I can only agree with the statement that there are lots of devices, there are lots of things that transform our sensibility. However, in my dissertation, I focus mostly on cinematic sensibility, which is the object of my research. However, I would like to say that it would be interesting to make parallels here between the cinema and different other elements. Moreover, we would also like to say that it would be interesting to think if cinema can make humans closer to the pure sensory experience. Professor Sokolov also states that only human sensibility can revive cinematic sensibility. That is why we shouldn't make a difference here. However, I would like to say that I make this difference because it is important for comprehensive analysis. In the first chapter, I write that human presence is not a guarantee of cinematic sensibility. So cinema doesn't exist when somebody's watching it. It exists when it watches something. I say so because there are some films which have never been watched by anyone. Moreover, it is also important to shift the accent from perception to production. So a human element is present here. However, it is not a guarantee of cinematic production. It's an instrument that allows it to be realized. It's a sort of mediator. And now I would like to say I agree with the last two comments made by Professor Sokolov. Maybe I didn't say so. Maybe I didn't say it in so many words in my dissertation, but I mentioned that human sensibility is never isolated from other types of experience. That would be all. Thank you very much. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, are you satisfied with the answers? Yes, I'm satisfied. Okay, that's great. Now, the next item on our agenda is questions received via email and questions from the audience. In the audience, we will have the academic degree seeker and the research advisor. And we haven't received any questions by email, so I would like to proceed to the next item on our agenda. I give the floor to the academic research advisor. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, dear colleagues, I would like to thank you for providing critical remarks. I would like to make some commentaries. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the academic degree seeker herself. In my opinion, Darina Polikarpova was a perfect postgraduate student. She did everything on time. She did everything even ahead of time. And she didn't focus on the dissertation itself. She focuses on the research area. She made presentations, she published research papers. So writing a dissertation was part of her research work. She participated in the grant research. She also made presentations at various international and Russian conferences. She wrote a number of papers, and the papers which are mentioned, which have been mentioned today, are the major papers. She has published a lot more research papers. Now I would like to say a few words about the dissertation itself. You have already mentioned that this is fundamental research. any fundamental research touches upon several areas. And I would like to say that with a caveat, this dissertation touches upon different areas. For example, it deals with art, it deals with methods in humanities. However, the scientific specialty here is aesthetics, and aesthetics has made a move forward over the past 20 years, and the dissertation by Darina Polikarpova is in line with modern research in aesthetics. Aesthetics is not only philosophy of art or philosophy of the beauty. Today we're talking about aesthetics as a philosophy of the sensibility. But the dissertation allows us to look at sensibility from a different angle. Sensibility is not always connected with the human element, and this is the novelty of the research. Thank you for your reports again. Thank you. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, does anybody want to make a comment? No comments. So this is the end of the academic discussion. Slavka, would you like to say something? You are given the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like that it was very nice. I mean your words, and I would like to say that I met Darina 3 years ago in World Congress of Aesthetics. She was a lay, or how to say, beginner, but she presented very remarkable expertise, and I noted that it is very interesting scientific person. So I would say that I agree with these nice words, and I'm very happy with his dissertation defense, also with her answers to my question. They were very good balanced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Slavka.
Спасибо большое.
Now, this is the end of the academic discussion. Now I would like to ask each member of the Dissertation Council if they have any questions about the procedure of the defense, including the remote regime. Professor Kupchakova, do you have any objections or commentaries about the procedure?
No, I'm satisfied. I'm content with it.
У вас есть замечания?
Professor Bugaeva, do you have any remarks? No, I don't have any remarks. Professor Rykov, do you have any remarks? No. Professor Kharyanov, do you have any objections? No. That's great. Now, there are two options here. We can have a technical break and switch off the broadcast and discuss the results if we find it necessary, or we can move on to the open voting. Do you think we need a technical break?
No.
Do you think we should discuss the results first, or do you think we can start with open voting? I suggest that we start with open voting. Let us check the time. So it's 4:30 12:57 Moscow time. I hope we can see each other and we can hear each other. We're beginning the open voting on the issue of conferring or not conferring the academic degree to Darya Polikarpova, scientific specialty 573 aesthetics. It is emphasized by voting in favor. Each member of the Dissertation Council states that item 11 of the order has not been violated. Here I quote: "The academic degree seeker shall make references to the sources that have been used to write the dissertation. If the academic degree seeker used the research findings obtained by the degree seeker themselves or in collaboration, the academic degree seeker shall point this out. Let me remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council is positive provided more than 50% of the Council members have voted in favor." Now let us move on to open voting. Professor Bugaeva, how do you vote? What's your opinion? I vote in favor of conferring the academic degree. Professor Rykov, what's your opinion? I vote in favor of conferring the academic degree. Professor Kharyanov, how do you vote? I vote in favor. Professor Kapchakova, how do you vote?
I vote positively. I can't write in my mobile. I vote positively in favor of so to be deserved to her. I have this formula by me, so I vote positively for awarding her with the title.
Хорошо. Ну и
And
It's you the propose?
I also vote in favor of conferring the academic degree. So it's not difficult to count the votes. Out of 5 members of the Dissertation Council, 5 members have voted in favor of conferring the academic degree. Nobody has voted against or abstained from voting. So, Darina Polikarpova is awarded the academic degree of the candidate of Philosophical Sciences, Scientific Specialty 573 Aesthetics. Now, closing remarks from the academic degree seeker. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank the chairperson of the Dissertation Council for chairing the procedure, and I would like to thank all the members of the Dissertation Council for reading my dissertation and for writing my report. I would like to thank St. Petersburg State University, where I studied for 9 years. And I would like to thank the Institute of Philosophy of St. Petersburg State University for organizing this event. I would like to thank those who also helped me with my research. First of all, I would like to thank my research advisor, Artyom Radeev. Thank you for those 6 years that we have been working together. 3.5 years ago, Professor Radeev told me that I was a super student, and I wrote my master's degree paper also under his supervision. And I would like to return the compliment. I think that Professor Radeev is a super research advisor. I have always felt his support. I'm very happy to be the first postgraduate student who has received an academic degree under your supervision. I would like to thank the University of Liberal Arts of St. Petersburg State University. It is there where I became interested in the philosophy and history of the cinema. I would like to thank Professor Savchenkova, and Professor Fomenko, who gave me really useful advice and supported me. I would like to thank my friends and my colleagues who were the first readers of my dissertation and who gave me useful advice. Now I'm very happy that I can thank my students. Talking with my students also provided incentive for writing my research. Now I would like to thank other people as well who provided their support. I would like to thank my friends and my family. Unfortunately, I cannot list all of them, but I would like to thank my dad and my husband, Marat. They have always provided support for me in my research. Thank you very much. Well, it wasn't a brief closing remark, but I think we should congratulate Darina Polikarpova. She's a new candidate of philosophical sciences. So the session of the Dissertation Council is over. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the members of the Dissertation Council. Goodbye.